Good morning, everybody. Today, I want to talk about what's the difference between doing a well yield for 1 hour, 3 hours, or 6 hours. This is something I come across very often where if you're a realtor that's used to public water and public sewer, it's a little bit of a confusing thing when you get to the private world of wells and septic. Let's get into it. So, you're buying a house. You want to know, well, do I have enough water? How's everything working? Is the water going to be perfectly fine? Is it good to drink? How much water do I have? Can I get good pressure? I always hear that city pressure is higher than public or private water. It's not true, right? So let's kind of do this piece by piece. When you have well water, you do need to test the water regularly to make sure that everything's safe and good to drink. EPA recommends to test at least once a year for bare minimum, your bacteria and your nitrates, right? No big deal. Super important. Make sure you do it. They have at-home test kits that you can try and do. Some of them are reliable, some so not so much. Just make sure you look up to see what the false positive rate is. Or you just hire a lab to either come collect it or you bring the water to them, right? And then they'll be able to tell you what's going on inside of your water. But it doesn't really matter what's going on inside of your water if your well can't produce enough water for you to consume and use in your day-to-day life. So a lot of times in Maryland, when you're transferring the property, you're going to have what's called a well yield done, right? For a new construction well, there's far more rules and far more regulations that everything's expected to meet to and conform to. So the testing's far stricter and also has county supervision. But when the well's already in the ground, the only county in the state of Maryland that has any rules on how to test it is Baltimore County. So it really kind of comes down to your specific contract. And so in some contracts, when you're transferring the property, you're going to have people who want to do a well yield. The well yield is what's going to tell you how much water is coming out of the well. It doesn't necessarily tell you the flow rate. It'll tell you what the discharge rate is, but that's going to change, right? So you'll see some people will offer a 1 hour yield, 3 hour yield, or a 6 hour well yield. Most commonly in our area, 6 hour well yields are reserved for Baltimore County or for new construction wells. So you'll generally see either 1 hour or 3 hour. In my opinion, the most accurate result will always be from the 3 hour well yield, right? That way you know for sure what your drawdown is, what your yield is, and all the equipment's actually working with the system. What you'll see with the 1 hour well yield is just kind of a high level. Does the pump work? Does the water flow out of the house? What color is it? Is it brown? Is it clear? Does the pump stop working, right? Did something happen? It tells you, hey, maybe mechanically we've got a problem that we need to get addressed prior to moving in. So when you're doing a well yield, you got to think about where are you going to do the test from? So Baltimore County requires that you do either the yield from the well itself or you do the yield from the pressure tank T, right? So in the house, you're going to have a big blue tank, the little hose bib and T assembly. That's where you would want to hook up. The reason why you would do it from the well is so you can see what's going on inside of the well and be able to use your commercial pump to get the water out, and you're able to get a far greater understanding of what's going on inside of that specific well. But the problem is when you're transferring the property, it doesn't tell the buyer anything about the equipment that comes with the house, right? And so that's why Baltimore County says, oh yeah, you can do it from the pressure tank T, and you just use the pump and the current infrastructure in the home to test the yield. You can still do the exact same test. You get very similar results, but the difference is that when you're doing it from the pressure tank, you'll be able to actually see what does the equipment that comes with the house do. So when you're doing it from there, you're basically getting the solid 1 inch pipe all the way into the house, and you have little to no restriction points, such as a filter or a smaller size pipe. Where you'll see a lot of people in the area kind of mess up is they will have a 1 hour well yield that they actually do from an exterior hose bib. The problem with doing a well yield from an exterior hose bib, most hose bibs outside are only 1/2 inch pipe. So if you restrict the pipe, you will lose the flow of the water, but you'll gain pressure. And remember, we're not testing for pressure, we're testing for how much water do you have. If you have plenty of water, you can easily improve and increase the volume of pressure that's in the house, whether it be through a booster pump or through some other means like pipe constriction or removal of filters, etc., right? So the 1 hour yield, if you're going to do it, it's high level, tells you, hey, equipment works, but you can't do it from an outside spigot. You have to start the yield at least 8 gallons or more. But let's say you got a 600-foot well. right? Well, you got 600-foot well on a 6-inch well casing. That's 1.5 gallons of water per linear foot. So if you only run it for an hour, you'll see that it starts high. As long as you start over 8 gallons per minute, if you throttle it back to 1, every well will pass, and that's cheating. You're not allowed to do that. But if you start at 8 and then you see that it falls down, but it hasn't plateaued yet, that means you're still only drawing the reserve. You've not actually found the yield. So if you're doing an exterior hose bib, you run it for an hour, and you get, let's just say, 6 gallons per minute, right? Well, it's going to make you think that the well's a lot better. But if you have a 600-foot well that was drilled at 1 gallon per minute, only running it for an hour, it's not really going to tell you if the well's actually still producing 1 gallon per minute. So that's why a 3-hour well yield would be a far better idea, because the 3-hour well yield will be able to tell you exactly your start point, drop, plateau. Baltimore County requires that if you have a 3-hour test, which you're required to do, you can't do a 1-hour well yield in Baltimore County, but you start 8.0 or above, you see your drawdown, you're making measurements every 15 minutes. Once it plateaus, you need to get 4, so 1 hour every 15 minutes, 4 of the exact same reading. Otherwise, you just keep going, right? So if you have fall, plateau, and then the third one, it falls again, that 1 hour resets, and then you keep going until eventually you either hit 6 hours or you get 4 consistent marks, right? The determination for what goes from a 3 to 6 hour well yield is 4.0 in Baltimore County. Every other county, it doesn't really matter. So like if you're doing a 3-hour well yield in Carroll County and you get 2.8, okay, well, you got 2.8. You're done in 3 hours. So the 3-hour well yield will give you more information. It'll make it far better for you as a prospective purchaser and a homeowner to know exactly what's going on, and it doesn't really give you a false sense of security. 1-hour well yields are really good in this competitive market because everybody's trying to get houses. I recognize that it's hard to get in when you're asking for inspections, and there's tons of people out there who are waiving inspections still. Silly idea, but you got to do what you got to do to get a house. The 1-hour well yield will tell you, hey, is the pump working? Do I have enough water, like 500 gallons or whatever, to at least live with and deal with? It'll tell you, like, hey, what's the well casing look like? What's the pressure tank look like? Does all the equipment look normal? Does it look good? Is it leaking? Is it got water shooting out of the ground? What's going on? 3 hours more of a scientific measurement. So if you're trying to debate on what you want to do when you purchase the home, it really kind of depends on your preference, right? You're the buyer, you're the homeowner. You can choose what you want to do and how you want to test it. It's your house. So if you're in a competitive market, you know that you've got 5 or 6 competing offers on the home, it's okay to do a 1-hour well yield. You don't have to limit yourself to 3. Unless you're in Baltimore County, you don't get an option. You're doing 3 or 6, right? But the rules are slightly different as far as who's responsible for what and what you're allowed to ask for and what the sellers are allowed to either deny and all, right? If you're looking to get a more specific, accurate answer, the 3-hour well yield all day, every day will be able to tell you exactly what's going on. And you'll be able to see, hey, I have 400 gallons of water in reserve prior to hitting my yield, and my yield's 3, right? Whatever the number is. That way you know, hey, maybe I can't fill a pool using this, which you shouldn't be filling a pool with a well anyway, but people still do it. But if you know what your yield is, you'll be able to figure out, like, maybe I need to watch this. So I hope that I was able to help you guys figure out a little bit more of my opinion on 1-hour versus 3-hour well yields. I think that if you have the option, you should always choose the 3 because it's more accurate. But if you're on a squeeze or you got a tight timeline or something silly's going on, 1 hour is fine. Just know that it's not as accurate as the full 3-hour. If you enjoy content like this, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, as I'll have more content posted every day on the world of well and septic. If you're interested in any kind of specific topics for me to cover, make sure you leave a comment below. I try to get back to all of them as quick as I can. Till next time.